Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. I want to thank Representative Greg Amori coming in from East Providence to talk about school safety measures. We're going to tack a little more north now. We're going to go up to Boston, where I have Dr. Dr Spiegel, renowned plastic surgeon, here with me in studio. Dr. Spiegel, thank you for joining us today.
Great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's especially newsworthy that we have you on because we just heard up in Massachusetts, Swampscott's principal, one of the educators there, has announced that they are transitioning. And you are very much at the forefront of this transitioning process in plastic surgery for the face, facial feminization surgery. And you're one of the world-renowned experts. How did you get into this?
Good question. You know, I'm a facial plastic surgeon in the Boston area in Newton, like you said, and I'm also a professor at Boston University in the School of Medicine. So many years ago, when I was just starting my career, a transgender woman came to see me and said, "Can you help me look more like I'm supposed to? Because people are using the wrong genders, using the wrong pronouns, and this is frustrating." So I said, "Well, sure, I can do surgery, but what am I supposed to do? Like, what do you need to do?" I looked at the literature on it, and there was very little written. Now, it turns out, after the research myself, that knowing how to make a face look feminine is fundamental to knowing how to make a face look attractive and beautiful.
And so what are some of those things that you look at? If someone approaches you and says, "I know you're at the forefront of this," and you look at a male who's transitioning to a female's face, I mean, what are the characteristics that you look at and say, this is how we're going to approach this?
Great question. Well, you've probably heard the old saying, beauty is skin deep. Well, it turns out that beauty is deeper than skin deep. Beauty is bone deep. You know, a lot of what we use to determine if a person is a male or a female, if a person is young or old, if a person is attractive or unattractive, has to do with the shape of their skull. So I'll do things like set back the skull here. I'll make the eye sockets larger. We'll make the cheeks larger. We'll make the jawbone narrower. We'll get rid of any Adam's apple. We'll change the shape of the hairline, change the shape of the eyebrows. There's just an enormous number of minor things that we pay attention to that make the difference.
And how much of that is the symmetry? You see it in the press all the time of the conventionally attractive people. You see the lines drawn, it's the chin, it's the ratio to the eyes. Does that play a role?
You know, I don't think it's a huge part. Symmetry is important to an extent. No one's completely symmetric. Symmetry is helpful, though. You know, if you're very asymmetric, it might be a sign of disease, right? Or some sort of developmental abnormality, which is why we would find symmetry attractive. But all these mathematical ratios that people have tried to calculate and determine over the years, they don't really hold up to careful scrutiny. And it makes sense. You know, there are attractive faces that are Caucasian and African and Asian and you name it, every ethnicity in the world. There are beautiful faces, and the ratios and the numbers are different. So it's something else. It has to do much more with the play of light. You know, we really look for bright eyes, a bright mouth. We want to see a lot of light reflected from these areas.
And so when you have someone who comes in and says, "I'm transitioning," they have other things that they're looking at as well, other medical bills as well. Do you give them suggestions and say, "This is what I recommend"? Is it a la carte? Is it nose, cheeks, ears? Or do you really have to sort of do the whole kit and caboodle?
You know, a la carte is a funny way to put it, but it's not inaccurate. What I like to do is I'll look at a person's face and I'll say, okay, in the following order, here's where you're going to get the biggest impact. And I'll say, okay, if you want to be seen as very feminine, procedure 1. If you want to be seen as feminine and young, procedure 1 and 2. Feminine, young, and beautiful, 1, 2, and 3. And eventually, I get to the point where I say, this next one, this might be like massaging seats in your car. A fun thing to have, but you don't need it, right? Like, you might want it, but you don't need it. And you can decide if you want to get it or not. That's where we get into things like, you know, fuller lips versus less full lips, things like that.
And so when you talk about, to the average layperson, plastic surgery is plastic surgery, but talk to us, you talk about addressing bone structure, but then you talk about fillers and lips. I mean, how much of it is de facto changing the structure of a face, and how much of it is augmenting through fillers and things of that nature?
Well, it's both. You know, I need to control the play of light. So, for example, If I see someone and I want to make sure that they look young and attractive and beautiful, I'm going to look at how much light is bouncing off their eyes. If they have a heavy forehead with low eyebrows, this is like a visor. It's blocking the light. So I need to address that. If they have flattened cheeks, either because of testosterone exposure or because they're getting older or it just runs in the family, I might say, you know what, we should fill in this area. Now, many women, as they get into their 30s, 40s, and beyond, come into our office to get fillers in the cheeks. And that's because once you've rounded this out and gotten rid of the volume loss, your eyes get brighter, the eyelids get shorter, and the whole picture is feminine, youthful, and beautiful.
So, how much of your business, doctor, are people who are transitioning, and are you seeing more and more of it?
Well, I've been probably the busiest surgeon at this in the world for many years. So we see people from, you name it, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, California, everywhere, every day who come in. But we also see an equal number of women who are not transgender who come from these same places with the thought of, my gosh, if you can take someone who looks like a man and make them look like a beautiful woman or a supermodel, imagine what you can do for me. I'm not starting off with that much of a handicap. And we see that all the time. So, we're super busy. That's the biggest problem I have, is that it's pretty hard to get in to see us. But we're working on trying to increase the capacity.
A couple more questions while I have you, doctor, because this is fascinating and you're an expert in the field. How much does estrogen and testosterone play in the transitioning process and actually sort of helping change features and the makeup of a person?
Well, it depends on what stage in your life. If you're going through puberty, the influx of hormones can have a major effect on how your body looks. And then once you've matured, I think it depends on where you're going. If you are a woman who is transitioning to a man and you take testosterone, you will look like a man very quickly.
Okay.
If you are a transgender woman transitioning to look more female, the estrogen, I don't think, helps a ton. It can improve your skin quality. It can improve some of the fat distribution. Very importantly, for the work that I do, it helps to prevent hair loss, because we do hair grafts and things for men who have lost their hair and for transgender women who've had testosterone exposure and had hairline recession.
So, question for you, doctor. You talk about facial feminization surgery. Do you do it the other way? Is there any way for, you talk about men taking testosterone, women transitioning to men taking testosterone and that helping. But do you ever see someone come in that says, help me look more like a man?
Sure. We see that for transgender men and for men who just want to have a stronger or more angular look. So we can do jaw implants, chin implants. We can add to the Adam's apple. We can make the cheeks larger or smaller. Just about any body part you can think of, we can move around.
Final question, doctor. Caitlyn Jenner is a very well-known figure for a transgender surgery that has been out there. What would you have done differently with Caitlyn Jenner?
Well, that's an awkward question for me, but I'll tell you, most of the famous transgender models and actresses and celebrities who you look at and you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that she's transgender. They all came through our office. For Caitlyn Jenner, I would have had a different approach. So I'll just leave it at that.
Does it really come down to the individual? You talk about that. I mean, you see pictures of Caitlyn, other transgender individuals, but is it really on the individual basis?
Are you talking about how good you can look?
Yes, how good you can look or what you decide to do.
Well, there's a number of things. So, for example, certainly someone who is better looking to start with will end up better looking when they're done, right? So if you give me Arnold Schwarzenegger, I can't give you Tinkerbell, right? That's not going to work.
No.
But we can do a really good job. And then after that, with all modesty, there's a certain amount of artism and skill that's associated. So I sometimes use the analogy of paint. You can give paint to two people. One person will make you a masterpiece, and the other one's going to make a mess, and you have to get a new carpet.
Well, you're a foremost expert in the field. And again, based off of what we saw with the Swampscott principal saying that they're transitioning, and plenty of individuals are around the country, and you're at the forefront of the field, wanted to talk with you a little bit about that expertise in the facial feminization surgery. So, doctor, I appreciate your taking the time to Skype in with us here at GoLocal. Hopefully we'll have the chance to talk with you soon.
It's my pleasure. And if you ever want to come visit us at the Spiegel Center, you're welcome.
Fantastic, doctor. Well, we appreciate it. We wish you a good evening, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thanks. Dr. Jeffrey Spiegel, appreciate his taking the time to Skype in. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our next guest here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center.